All right, good afternoon and welcome to Virginia Family Network's November Lunch and Learn. This month, we are going to talk about parent voice and the importance of it and how to help get what we need to help our families and our kiddos. Again, my name is Nicole Anjum. I am the program assistant for Virginia Family Network. And today we are joined by Charlotte Talley. She is a family support partner, and she'll tell you a little bit more about her and what she does and all that great stuff. We're also joined this month by Liz, who is a parent who's going to give her experience and help us understand how to use your voice and kind of get what you need. All right, ladies, we can take it away.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon on this wonderful sunny day in Richmond. As Nicole said, I am a family support partner. And really what that means is I am a parent with lived experience, and I support other parents and families to help them to use their voice to ensure that the systems of care folks are hearing parents, what it is that they need, what their concerns are, and how to better help them to help their child succeed. Parent voice and choice. I have difficulty separating the two because I think that our choice as a parent is so important because you know your child best. Young or however old your child is, right into adulthood. You know that child, you know that child's history, you know that child's quirks, personalities, likes, dislikes, and all of those things. And so what you have to say to the powers that be, whether it's the professionals at school, a teacher, a therapist, someone on the FAP team or a case manager, your voice is so important because you can speak specifically to what is going on with your child. And that's what I want to emphasize in regard to our voice as parents. How we speak and what we say is valuable. And we get people to listen when we're able to use our voice to say what needs to be said in a way that it can be heard. And I don't know about you, but that's really hard for me sometimes. You know, I've found myself feeling pretty tired, defeated, frustrated, angry even. And when I'm in that place in regard to my own child, I need to find a place where I can deal with me and my emotions so that I can effectively go and speak to those people who are making decisions, who are involved in my son or daughter's life, to help them to understand my needs, my concerns for my child, what's going on with him, you know? And one example that I have is with talking with parents. You know, I often hear some really difficult stories of their struggle and how their voice hasn't been heard. But the pleasure that I get out of supporting other parents to help them to know that they do have something to say and that their voice does need to be heard. When a parent does that and finds that they are heard and that they're being met based on what they're saying, it's a powerful experience. And I want to give Liz an opportunity as a parent to share a little bit about her journey and what she's learned in using her voice. So Liz, you want to share with us today?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So I have a son who's about to turn 16, and it has been a hard road. I think that I am more of a shyer person and I don't really speak up a lot. So learning to do that for him or to assist him in the process has been a struggle on my part. But then, like you said, so fulfilling in the end when I did do this. I know for us, one of the hard things was to get over that first hurdle of how isolating it can be to be a parent of a child with the type of issues that my child has. And you sort of learn to hide in the shadows because it's overwhelming and it can be embarrassing in public with outbursts and such. So overcoming that, and just also realizing that even though the situation feels a certain way to me, listening to my child and how it feels to him, and then being able to broadcast that to the appropriate people in a way that they understand it is just, it's so monumental, because with them being, younger, it's harder for them to vocalize that. And just, we did have a lot of setbacks. We had a lot of time where I felt like we weren't heard and we were just sort of pushed to the side, and we just kind of had to keep talking. We had to keep saying stuff, and we had to keep coming out of our comfort zone and going and saying, we need help. No, we need help. And not stepping down. In a way, you get a stronger backbone during that time frame. But it's not an easy process. But I think once you put that foot in front of the other and you start it, it becomes easier, and you learn a lot about yourself in it. I learned that a lot of my son's issues are similar to issues that I have that I just never even realized. And, in the cocoon of our family, in our home where I thought it was our safe spot, behaviors that I did to deal with his behaviors just sort of kept snowballing and making a worse problem. So going out and talking to people and reaching out and finding professionals, even as much as we had to use DSS and for our county and even the police departments, just vocalizing it and being honest helps. Honesty was a huge part of it.
We lost you, Liz. We lost you.
Okay.
I'll text her to let her know.
Can you hear me? I think I'm
Oh,
going a lot.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
she
there you are. Yeah, we lost your voice. Not intentionally, but sometimes I wonder if because of the way we're saying something as parents that we're not being heard. And whether it's we're not really speaking up, like we couldn't hear Liz, she was speaking, but she it wasn't coming through across because of technology. But I wonder if there's times in our lives when we are speaking, we're maybe not using the right voice so that we are being heard. I referenced for you that when I'm tired, defeated, frustrated, angry. I remember one time I made a call. I was trying to get services, and I was having one of those days, and I communicated exactly how I was feeling in the way that I said it to the person that I had on the phone. I got off the phone and I thought, well, boy, that really didn't get me anywhere. I realized that I was kind of just spewing all of my feelings. That's what I was communicating, is my feelings. And I really hadn't effectively communicated the need or the concern. And needs are sometimes about services, but needs are much more. So when we're telling our stories, when we're sharing about the needs of our son or daughter, we need to share it in a way that provides examples for what the needs or the concerns are, that helps the other person, like Liz said, about perspective. It gives them a perspective on what challenges that we're facing, not just our experience, but a perspective on the real needs that the child's presenting. I wonder, Liz, if you have an example in regard to using your voice where you weren't feeling heard, and particularly in working with your son's team, where they really weren't hearing you. They were kind of missing the mark and not really understanding. And what happened in that moment that it turned around when you said what your son needed and why he needed it? Oh, there you are.
You can hear me. I'm standing right by the router now.
I think of, in particular, in talking about visits and holidays, and the team was kind of like missing the boat in regard to what was going on there.
I do think that was an issue. We had a hard time getting visits set up because he is in foster care now in another part of the state. I was feeling like my son was going to revert back to old behaviors because he was holding in and doing so well with trying to remanage himself and do what was asked to him. And this carrot was dangling in front of him. If you do this, you get visits, kind of, but they weren't happening. And I was getting frustrated, on phone calls with him. And I think telling the team at that point,
No. Sometimes it's a video thing.
Yeah.
This helps.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I think once the team realized that was occurring, that he was going to backslide probably, and they jumped in and they were able to get, we got creative then. We were able to sort of go around the issue that was keeping us from being able to do visitation, and we got creative, and it's been great because one of the things we do is family therapy. I go down there for it weekly, and then we spend time together afterwards. So we get that great family therapy visit where we work through problems, and I learn different ways to interact with him and handle issues and vice versa. And then we get to go out and use them immediately.
Yes.
So that was great.
But that was all because you were willing to share examples of what was happening with your son that was communicating the need. And I think that, that's what I want to share with all of you folks out there today. You as a parent, you know your child better than anybody. So if you can give examples when you're talking to teachers or administrators or case managers or the FAP team or whoever it is, if you can provide an example of what needs your child has, and, the practical, the day-to-day. I think of a recent situation that we're going through with our son, and he said to me one day, he said, I have the biggest sadness. And that was really concerning to me that he referred to his sadness as being big, so we were able to talk through that a little bit. But I was really struggling to try to find outpatient counseling for him. We've been on waiting lists, we some of you probably know that getting services right now is not the easiest task. There are many waiting lists out there for all different kinds of services, medical and mental health and behavioral supports. And not that needs equal services, but in some instances, we need a service, but we need something more. And in that situation, I reached out to the folks that we were on waiting lists, and I just communicated that statement that my son said. I said, he is saying that he has big sadness, and then I described the behaviors that I was seeing as far as him being isolating and withdrawn and very sad, and seeing that physical response from him, and reached out to an agency that they don't have a waiting list, but I call them monthly to say, hey, do you have any openings? Can you meet the need? And had to actually, because the way that you do that with this particular agency is that you have to fill out a form on their website to request services. Now that doesn't put you in the queue for a waiting list, but if they have an opening, they call you. And if they don't, they call to say they can't take anybody. Well, in this situation, I sent out emails. I filled out this form again on the website, and I just said, he is reporting that he has really big sadness. And then I talked about the behaviors that I was seeing that were new and different, and left it at that. And this is late on a Tuesday evening. And the following day, I go for a walk with a friend. And I was just sharing my heartache with her for my son and what he had communicated with me. Well, this led to a conversation. And this is where it's not a service, right? It's a relationship. And oftentimes, the needs that we are being faced with trying to meet with our children can often be met within the context of relationships, our relationships with others and our relationship with our children. But we have to use our voice to communicate the heart and soul of our need, rather than our frustration, our ambivalence, our anger. We need to use our voice to say, state the facts, what's going on, you know? And so with my friend, we explored what this sadness could mean. And the reality is, we all felt over the course of the pandemic a deep sadness, lack of connectedness. You know, those little touch points that we have in our lives when we go to the grocery store or go to work, you know, and see the face of our colleagues, meet with families, whatever it might be. And so as she and I explored that idea of connectedness, I came up with the idea that, oh, well, maybe I can't resolve his grief, but I can help him to hold it through providing opportunities to connect with others more frequently and on purpose. And so I was able to begin to start meeting that need. Lo and behold, 3 days later, I get a call from the agency. They're offering an appointment for my son. So I felt doubly successful because I had a tool that I was using to help him to connect, to feel not so isolated and withdrawn. And I had the professional that I could rely on, that I could take him to get them to address the need of his grief, his loss, and his sadness. And so I want to encourage you as parents, use your voice, tell your child's story, share your concerns, share them with people that are professionals that can help to meet the need. But remember, the need is much more than a service. It's about a relationship that helps to explore solutions and create opportunities to help our children succeed. Liz, did you want to say something more in regard to some of the things that you have seen? I know Nicole might want to share something at this point as well.
Just that I agree with you. I think that a lot of, as a parent, when you're in this situation, it's overwhelming. I think I've used that word a lot today. And you do sort of, excuse the expression, but verbal vomit your feelings to your friends.
Great. Yeah.
One thing I have noticed and learned in this is no one talks about it. It's very hidden. And when you are in the midst of it and you can't find that common friend, that common ground that knows and understands what you're dealing with, and you're trying to reach out and get help from professionals and such, it sort of pushes you back more. So one thing that I did, and this is probably not right for everyone, but it works in our case. My child's not on social media. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have any links to that, but I use Facebook a lot to connect with people that I'm friends with all over the country. I openly post about my experience. I don't use my son's name. I don't really say anything detrimental or I watch what I say, but I don't watch what I say, if that makes sense. And the amount of people who come in my private messages and say, can you help me? My son has this and I don't know what to do. Or I have a child and he's showing these behaviors and I don't know what to do. And I almost got this little private warrior group in my messages because I was able to speak up and say, hey, Facebook friends, this is how I feel and this is what my life is and this is the truth of it. And it's not always glittery and wonderful. Today really sucked. But I always do in those posts try to find one positive that's going on in our situation at least and put it in there, and give some references to who we're using professionally or how to jump through the hoops of like DSS and such. So that's been helpful on my end, just being honest and vocalizing, because I don't think people know. And that's also opened up realms where people will say, well, I know this person, this provider, or I know, for instance, my son's first foster care placement was not a good one. Because I vocalized it on Facebook, I actually had a friend whose wife knew them. And I was able to get in the door better to get him out of that foster situation, through some information that she gave me. And if I hadn't vocalized that, I wouldn't have known that. So it's kind of one of our examples.
Voice and choice. It's a powerful tool that we all have access to and can make a difference. It is important, like Liz said, you don't want to go and vomit all over someone. And that's kind of what I did that one day. But, I have learned that using my voice has power. And I hope that in the work that I do as a family support partner, to help other families to have their voice and to use it to be able to reach their goals, their family vision, and see their child thrive. Because that's what it's all about. That's what we want as parents, is children that can thrive in this world, in their relationships, in their families and communities. So use your voice. And, one of the things that I often do is I have to think about the conversation that I'm going to have. Whether it's, with a professional or with another parent, what is it that what's my intent for the information that I'm sharing? What am I trying to accomplish? With my child, I want to meet the need. He has a deep sadness that I can't fix for him. I can't resolve that for him, but I can help him to get through the challenge so that he can find solutions and ways that he can cope, so that he can be the kid that I know that he is, in relationships and be part of the family and enjoy life again. You can do that too.
I think these are really great examples about using your voice and how to use your voice with professionals and with your community, and really needing kind of that tribe of people, having someone to talk it out with first. I think I have a pretty good example of a time that really showed me how to use my voice, which is funny because I've been doing this work. You would think I would know, but it's my kid and my emotions get in the way.
Absolutely.
And she had some stuff going on at school with a teacher that was really like just calling her out and picking on her almost. So I had called the assistant principal, and so the first call did not go well. It was a lot of word vomit. It was a lot of, this is what's going on and you need to do this. And talking really fast. I'm sure he didn't hear half of what I was trying to say.
Right.
And hung up the phone. I'm like, there, I did something. And, a week later and nothing's changed. So kind of went to my people, and a lot of trying to figure out my next call has to have an intent. It has to have
Yes.
some purpose.
Mhm.
And I have to somehow keep myself under control. So kind of played out and almost rehearsed what I wanted to say.
Mhm.
Not so much like this is how I think the conversation's going to go, but this
Right.
is the point I want to make. So I can
Absolutely.
rehearse my part of it.
Yes.
So I called back and kind of put it out there. This is what's going on and this is what's happening. This is what my child is coming home saying that the teacher is doing.
Mhm.
So then he's like, oh, this makes more sense. Now I can go and kind of rectify the situation.
Yeah.
So it's a skill. It's one that you kind of got to keep building on and working
Yes.
with. But once you kind of start getting it, you understand. And then when you're doing for your own kids, you definitely need a little bit more prep and rehearsal because your emotions are going to get in the way. But as a family support partner, you get close to these families, and then I got to be careful about not overstepping or letting my
Mhm.
emotions get in the way there too. So put on my professional hat, and this is what I'm going to say to advocate and help others advocate and really modeling the way. Like
Yes.
there's a way to speak, and before we go to this meeting with the professionals, do you want to tell me what you think might be good for them to hear?
Mhm.
So it really helps them get all their jitters out and they don't sound like they're stumbling over words and feel all wonky, because when you don't feel like you're confident, you're not coming across confident either.
Yeah. Well,
So
or if you're
then-
overly emotional, and
Yeah.
you know,
And then
one
they're not picking up what you're trying to tell them.
absolutely, and I think what you said, Nicole, is so true. You know, the first time you vomited all over the assistant principal and thought, okay, I did something. The reality was a week later, you realized, wait a minute, nothing was accomplished here. And I think that's a really excellent point. When we can stop, when we can pause, and sometimes we need someone there to do that with us. Nicole and I are family support partners, and so we're there with families, like coming alongside Liz to support her so that her voice is being heard and asking questions when we're in those situations, supporting other parents. But as a parent, we can bring a friend with us. We can bring a family member with us. Whoever that person is that you feel like you've got some strength and some relationship with, and they're going to sort of like have your back and ask some questions or just support you so that you can use your voice. It's important to do that. I try not to go to meetings for my own child by myself. I'll pull in a speech therapist, I'll pull in a friend, I'll pull in an occupational therapist or an ABA coach. I don't hesitate because it's hard when you're trying to use your voice and be heard when there's 10 12 people at the table and they're talking about your kid, and it's very emotional because you're hearing all this and you've lived it, right? So you know it better than anybody at that table. And so I would encourage you to ensure that you kind of take an inventory for yourself. When are those times when you as a parent need someone else alongside of you to ensure that your voice is being heard, that those needs are being communicated and that examples are being provided so that the other people on the other side of the table can hear the needs and concerns that you have that are your perspective on your child and what your child needs. It goes a long ways in helping your child to get there.
Absolutely. I think we've given some really great tips today about, kind of rehearsing what you want to say and having someone come with you, finding your tribe, the people that you can kind of talk this stuff out with, and then realizing you may have to say it more than once. And that's okay, because the first time you're kind of getting all the emotion out and all the feelings out, and then the second time you come in with a clear head. Do we have any other tips for the parents that might be helpful when you're really trying to find your voice or use your voice? Because again, it's a skill. We're always going to be working on it and learning new tricks for it.
It is, Nicole. And I think oftentimes as parents, we can become so overwhelmed by the needs of our child and trying to get those needs met that before we go to speak, we have to pause to really assess the situation. What are the one or two or maybe even three top prioritized needs, the first things that you want to address? Those priority needs, three. I wouldn't say that you want to address more than three in one conversation with someone or in one meeting. That you want the people that you're speaking to hear and respond to. And if you can prepare that part of it, you're on good footing. You're starting at a good place to have those conversations.
And definitely part of that kind of pre-talk thing where you're like, I'm going to rehearse what I want to say, write an agenda out. I want to cover this, this, and this, like a checklist. Yep, I got my 2 or 3 things that I know that I want to cover.
Yeah. And even if you want to write down a statement that actually is an example that communicates the need, like in regard to my son, I wrote down the example of he has this big sadness. And so what do I want to do with that? What do I want to see change? I want him to feel better so that he can enjoy his family and his life, his school, and his community. Okay, so I've got something to work with there, right? You can do the same thing in regard to whatever those needs with your child might be. Maybe it's your child's not sleeping at night, they're up with night terrors, or they're having meltdowns throughout the day and can't manage to pull themselves together. What do you want the child's life to look like? That's a good way to give your voice the space and the place to be heard.
Virginia Family Network also has a couple different educational courses that help you learn how to tell your story and use your voice. We have Children's Challenging Behaviors that more helps you learn how to communicate with your child. But that's sometimes the first step is figuring out what your family needs. We also have Advanced Parent Leadership, where you learn how to tell your story and kind of start advocating and making system changes, even school system, even when you go to a provider and you feel like they're not listening to you and making change there. There's other events that Virginia Family Network provides. We're starting to talk about this year's summit. So there's breakout sessions and there's usually something in there about advocacy and telling your story.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always these opportunities to continue to learn about using your voice and being able to tell others what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Nicole. And I think those are all really great resources. It's important for us as parents to connect with other parents. And there's a number of varieties of ways to do that Nicole just mentioned. I think that that's where the power is. We're not alone in this.
So I want to thank you both for being with me today and really sharing about this great topic and letting people know, the tips, the tricks, and learning more about this skill and really making it a strong skill to have. I've been watching the chat on Facebook. No one has any questions for us yet. So if you're watching this later today and you do have questions, please put them in the chat. I will answer what I can. If I am not able to answer it, I have all kinds of great resources like Charlotte, who will be able to help us figure out how to best brainstorm this with you.
And remember, voice and choice really do go well together, because you as a parent have choices that you can make to help your child and help professionals to do a better job at helping them. I think that sometimes as a parent, we have something to say that's difficult for others to hear, but it needs to be said nonetheless. Recently, in working with a parent, she said to me, she said, I can't do this, all of these services in my home 5 days a week. It's too much for me. Because we were talking about the need for consistency. And when this mom was able to say, I want this, this, and this, I was like, I celebrated her, because you know what? It's going to work when it's working for her to begin. That's where there will be consistency, and that's where change comes. And that's when we help families, is when we meet them where they're at, when we hear their voice, and when we celebrate them.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for all of the great information today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Liz, for joining me. Thank you for this opportunity to share on this very important topic. I hope that parents go away feeling strengthened to use their voice